The MoneroTopia guest segment is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys.
Alrighty, guys.
All right, we got
I'm going to go ahead and share my screen in 1 second, and I have some insights from other people I'm going to bring up as well that'll help expand on the conversation. Yikes. Yeah, I'm trying to scroll through my own timeline, and I've been tweeting nonstop this week. Okay. And I do hear an echo. I think it's through Doug's microphone.
Sorry about
Neelis
that.
did tip a super chat. Hey, you've got time to fool around? Stop what you're doing and get on goopacks.io, download it, and click start to stick it up Cubic's unwashed blankety blank. It literally takes you 5 minutes to mine Monero on Peterpool. Do it right now. I'm watching you. He is watching you. He's like looking through your window right now. He's got access to your webcam. You better do it. That's a joke.
He's making a list and checking it twice.
All right, trying to find my right tab. I've got a billion tabs open for the news. Okay, let me zoom in here. So this whole thing kind of initiated on the, it was either the 10th going into the 11th or the 11th going into the 12th. I think it was the 10th going into the 11th. Cubic was, this was right as they were switching to their selfish, oh, my screen actually.
You're not screen sharing?
Thank you, sir. It used to pull it up automatically. It doesn't anymore. So Cubic last week, well, I guess earlier this week, they started switching over to their selfish mining strategy, which enabled them to do some funny business more than they could have before. Because before it was more just looking at their hash rate and, seeing, it's getting a little bit up there, a little concerning. But switching to this selfish mining strategy of basically mining in secret and hoping they can get so many blocks ahead to then reorg the network, was somewhat successful and did allow them to do these reorgs. They had enough hash rate to make that happen, and they were able to get up to, I think, a single 7-block reorg and then a couple 6-block reorgs. They managed to get 6 blocks in a row with earlier timestamps than the blocks that were being mined by the other pools, and then they were able to just suddenly shove that into the network, and the network had to reorg because it saw the timestamps, and it was like, oh, these blocks are actually earlier. We got to switch to these ones. So they were able to do that a few times. They did a bunch of very small reorgs, like 2-3 blocks, but they did 1 7-block reorg, and that is as high as they got. But the real problem, or the real upset about this isn't even really the reorgs, it's how Cubic is presenting themselves. They are coming out. They have an official press release. Let me see if I can go to their website real quick. Cubic. Studio tipped $1. Kudos to Body and Tux, etc. on X for articulately dispelling the FUD and highlighting the coordinated attacks this past week, doing the Lord's work. Thank you, Pseudo. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Pseudo.
Yeah, so sharing this tab. So Cubic themselves, they are playing this off, and they are presenting themselves as if they had actually done 51% of the entire network. And everyone is just absolutely running with this. All of Cubic fanboys, all of their hundreds of bots. I don't think they're all bots, but there's definitely a lot of bots. And of course, all of the news and all of the journalists, all of these major corporate crypto news networks, they're all just absolutely running with this headline that Cubic took over the Monero network for a period of time.
These people who never say anything about Monero, never say a good word about Monero, suddenly have all come out of the woodwork simultaneously to shit talk Monero and Cubic 51%. That didn't even happen. Like, again,
crazy. Yeah,
we're retarded if we think that's not coordinated.
Yeah. And I don't even know if these same people were talking about it when, suddenly the price jumped to 350. They might have been, I don't know. But it is interesting that they're all like all of these. And I mean, this is not super surprising. Like journalists typically, like especially corporate journalists, are kind of in a way scum of the earth. They don't really care about the research or what's actually going on. They just want the headline. So in a way, it's not surprising. But there's a lot of big and small accounts who, like Bawdy was saying, don't really give a shit about Monero suddenly are all over this. And even people who are sort of adjacent to the Monero community are spreading this propaganda, and people are correcting them, and they don't really care. So they are basically presenting themselves here by actually owning 51% of the network. Yeah, so they say in their process here, the final successful push began on August 11th. Okay, yeah, so this was the 11th going into the 12th with the deployment of a more sophisticated selfish mining strategy. This technical tactic, which proved effective with slightly less and at times more than 51% of the total hash rate, involved the cubic pool secretly mining blocks and withholding them. The sudden appearance of orphan blocks on Monero network in the days leading up to the day was a telltale sign that cubic strategy was working. The tactic allowed the cubic pool to gain a disproportionate share of the block rewards and ultimately the network's consensus. So we're going to basically look at why this is just not true. A lot of what they're saying here is true. They did deploy a selfish mining strategy. They were able to mine quite a lot of blocks, which is why I'm not saying that their hash rate is false. Now, they could be misreporting it because we're basically like believing what their API says. But because of the amount of blocks they have been able to mine, I lean more towards it being true at this point. But the main reason why we can see that this is false, if we look at these charts that keep getting put up here. So this one in particular, let's see if I can make this bigger here. So this chart in particular here, it shows, this is from, I think, Cubic's API website. It shows a pool hash rate of 2.61 gigahash a second, and then it shows a network hash rate of 4.95 gigahash a second. Now, this network hash rate could be wrong, but why this is not true is because they are at the very least lying about the network hash rate, if not their own hash rate. And we can prove this by actually going to, actually, I'll open the website myself. So if we actually go to miningpoolstats.stream, and we take a look at the hash rate of all other pools. So if we ignore Cubic, you got to remember, Cubic actually disabled their hash rate for like an entire week. So you can see right here when they re-enabled it again, and the network hash rate with Cubic mining at 2.8 gigahashes is 7. It's 7. And the hash rate of all other pools over the past week has been around an average of 4.2 gigahash. And you got to remember that in order to 51% attack, you don't take the existing network hash rate and then add 50% to it. They have to take that and then double it if they aren't already participating in the network or by stealing miners over. But by looking at this chart, we can actually see that the average over the past 7 days, when they did commit the attack on August 11th, it never went below 3.7 gigahash for a very brief period there. And this was when Cubic was not reporting their mining via, or their hash rate via their API. So they showed up as just unknown hash rate. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, they were basically this unknown number, which now has 0.9%, because that is the people who are not on pools or are not reporting hash rate. So in order to actually have 51% of the attack, they would have had to have around 4.2 gigahash a second, approximately, depending on the exact time. And as we can see through these screenshots that people have been sharing, now this is just one I have here, but there's just one going around that has a big red scary number, shows 52%, and it shows around 2.6, 2.8 gigahash. They would have had to have around 4.5 gigahash a second in order to actually 51% the network. So while they do have quite a large amount of hash rate, and they have been able to get around up to, I've seen approximately 3 gigahash a second, once again, assuming that's actually true, they still aren't close to a 51%, because it just becomes even more expensive to add almost 50. Basically, they had to have 50% more of their own hash rate to 51% network, unless they could steal existing miners. And it looks like they weren't really doing that. I think all the miners that were to switch over to Cubic had already done that, and it didn't look like it was too much of the hash rate, if I'm being honest, because 4.2 gigahash for all their pools seems pretty in line with what it's been over the past year. So that's basically the main reason why this is just total BS, is taking into the account all the other hash rates of all the other pools and seeing the average of that and seeing what they actually need to hit to accomplish a 51%. Now, once again, I do tend to believe now that the numbers that they are posting by the API are probably true, because if we do actually look at the amount of blocks they've been able to mine, they have been able to mine quite a lot of blocks. So if we go to the last 1,000 blocks, Cubic.org did mine around 30% of the last 1,000 blocks, and that is higher than any other pool at the moment. And if we go to the last 100 blocks, they also managed to mine around 30%. So I do tend to believe that their hash rate is true, but they are basically just lying through misrepresenting statistics and misrepresenting their own data. And a lot of people are also claiming, they're sending a screenshot of this where Cubic had 51% of the blocks over the last 100 block period, which does not equal their hash rate. A lot of people are also purposely misrepresenting this, and also they don't understand it to begin with. Just because Cubic has 51% of the last 100 blocks of an arbitrary period does not mean they ever had more than 50% of the hash rate. This does not equal the hash rate. This can sort of plays in line with hash rate, which is why this sort of helps me know that their hash rate is real, what they're reporting, but this does not equal their hash rate. Because of how the distribution works. So the distribution is not equivalent to hash rate. There's a certain amount of probability and luck involved if you're going to get blocks at all. So people were sharing this around like crazy, is that, oh, they got 51 out of 100 blocks of some arbitrary period. It's like they hit the lottery, right? One time over some arbitrary period, they happen to have 51 out of 100 blocks, which is a lot. Don't get me wrong. That is a lot. But that did not mean their hash rate was even close to 50%. So that's the main breakdown of why that just isn't true. And once again, I'm not saying it's not something to be concerned about. There is somewhat of a concern, but they're seriously misrepresenting what's actually going on, and I think they're doing that on purpose to do what we've seen over the past week. Push this absolute FUD campaign, which in turn makes this easier for them. Which, if what Bawdy was talking about is true, and they are just a part of this suppression campaign, this helps them largely because not only do they suppress the price of Monero, like the price went down, this makes it easier for them to 51% if they want to, because the price of Monero coming down de-incentivizes all of these other mining pools. I don't think we've seen a significant drop off, but the price has dropped quite a bit. And if they can push it down much farther, I imagine that there's more and more miners that'll start to drop off as the profitability starts to tank, which ironically makes it easier for a Cubic to do just that if they wanted to. It makes it easier for them to actually take over the network and perform at 51%. And there's been a lot of like a change of attitude over the past week where they're like, oh no, we're not actually harming. We don't want to do that. We're actually trying to help. Well, if you wanted to help, maybe you could at least not lie about what happened. Like, the fact that they're lying about what happened, blatantly lying about what happened, goes to show me that they are in no way a friend of Monero. They are not actually wanting to help. If they actually wanted to help, they could have been honest about, yeah, we're testing the rigidity of the network and we're testing to see how far we can get. And they could have been honest about the fact that, hey, we didn't actually hit 51%. We got some of these reorgs, but we could not actually take over the network. But no, they're not actually being honest about it at all, which shows me that they are more than likely a malicious party.
There's, sorry to interject, there's a case to be made that for them to actually reorg the chain and try to double spend against like an exchange would probably open them up to legal liability. It's probably illegal for them to do that. Not that we should be relying on the government threats of whatever. Like that's a terrible fallback. But that is sort of a slight mitigation.
That's a good point, because Cubic they are an organization. Let's see. I think we got another. Yeah, we got another super chat here from Nihilist. Thanks, Tux, for recommending everyone to check miningpoolstats.stream/Monero to know Cubic's real, weaker than advertised hash power. I was about to do it in this super chat. All right, I'll go back to making sure everyone is spinning up their Goobacks, and thank you, Nihilist. And I do want to once again mention, I think the reported hash rate is probably true, but they are misrepresenting the total network hash rate through all their posts and misrepresenting their percentage. Now, I was made aware that this network hash rate, this is actually the average, or it might be the mean over the past 24 hours. This one right here, the small one, which you can only see if this window is large enough, this is the 100 block estimation. So don't rely on this for basically representing the current network hash rate. I imagine it's it might be hard to like very accurately report on the total network hash rate at any given time. So they just give an average. But what they can accurately report on is what they're getting back directly from the APIs, which is the all the pools that actually report. And you could make the same argument about these other pools. Maybe these pools are lying about their hash rate and making it higher than it should be, which then means Cubic maybe did actually 51%. I don't think they have any incentive to do that at all. And once again, if Cubic actually did 51% for any given time, we could have more easily seen that, hey, they're mining every single block for like 10 blocks, right? If they actually did that, they could mine every single block. They could mine empty blocks. They could double spend. Maybe if it was like for like a very short period of time, maybe it wouldn't be enough to actually see anything. But once again, I just don't see it the case is that Cubic actually got a 51%. And they're trying to back up that lie once again by pivoting and saying, "Oh, we didn't do anything bad because we don't want to attack the network." Well, no, you're saying that because you couldn't actually get to that point, and you're just lying about it. But I want to pull up and read this pretty interesting post from somebody that I came across. I think he's been in the Monero community for a little while. I guess I can't view an X article on. Oh, dang it! Wow, Twitter sucks ass. I cannot view an X article without going to my other browser. So give me a second while I move to the screen. But this individual, Johnny Law, he actually did some analysis on this attack that I just want to look through real quick because it's actually pretty solid. So let me stop sharing and reshare my screen. I think this one right here. Yeah, okay. So this is from at Johnny Law 2021. And he did a little bit of a investigation on this, debunking the Monero attack, or quote, attack rumors, a data-driven look at chain stability. And it reads, over the past few days, social media and some crypto forums have been buzzing with claims of an active attack on the Monero blockchain, implying deep reorganizations and sustained hash rate manipulation. To separate fact from speculation, we pulled direct RPC data from a local sync Monero node and examined the network's actual reorg history, hash rate, and pool distribution. The verdict, the numbers do not support the attack narrative. Why a reorg on Monero is less spooky than on Bitcoin. So in Bitcoin, the most transparent UTXO chains, transactions and orphaned blocks are publicly visible and can be selectively remined, enabling targeted double spends. This makes even shallow reorgs a potential tool for deliberate financial attacks. Monero is different. Its transactions are private by design. Even if a block is orphaned, the contents are shielded without public mempool visibility or clear transaction origin/destination. Executing a profitable targeted double spend is vastly more difficult, which is a very good point that I and a lot of other people forgot to bring up. This is why a Monero reorg, while still worth monitoring, is inherently less dangerous from a theft perspective than a Bitcoin one. So recent orphan history data, not drama. To evaluate claims of instability, we queried our local node for recent alternate chains and calculated the reorg depth. So if you want to actually see any of this yourself without relying on other websites, like Recnium did make this really cool Monero consensus.info website, which I do recommend you check out. But if you want to actually rely on this on your own end, you can see a lot of this data just directly through a Monero node you have synced locally, like he did here. So he did a network health check mid-August 2025 over the past approximately 2 weeks, or 10,000 blocks at Monero's 120-second target. Total reorged orphan blocks 118. Total reorg events 85. Average orphaned blocks per day around 8.4. Average reorg events per day around 6.1. And share of total blocks affected approximately 1.17%. The depth profile is a vast majority of reorgs are 1 block long, which that happens normally all the time. Sometimes 2 mining pools mine at almost the same time or within a similar time frame, and one just gets a little bit sooner and they win. That happens. That's normal. And then the next category is a small number extending to 2 to 7 blocks. Now that's a bit more suspicious, especially as you get higher up in that range, and that's what we saw Cubic doing. And the third point here is all observed alternate chains were behind the main chain in cumulative difficulty, meaning no sustained equal or greater difficulty competitor was observed. interpretation. This is consistent with normal background orphaning due to network latency and simultaneous block finds. There is no evidence here of an ongoing deep reorg attack. Hash rate reality check from the node's own get info RPC. Current difficulty is this long number. Target block time 120 seconds. Estimated network hash rate approximately 5.58 gigahash a second, which does fall in line with what we've seen. Because this hash rate is computed directly from difficulty and block target, it cannot be faked by an external website. While public mining dashboards can be manipulated or delayed, the local node's difficulty reading reflects actual consensus state. Pool attribution, no clear single entity dominance. We sampled 100 recent block Coinbase transactions, extracted miner tags where present, and matched them to known pool identifiers. Monero Ocean, Support XMR, Petapool, Nanopool, Hero Miners. Many blocks lacked pool tags, but no single identifiable pool dominated the majority. A significant share came from unknown or untagged miners, typical for Monero's privacy-friendly ecosystem. Then comparing to Bitcoin's orphan history, Bitcoin has also experienced many orphan chains, some of them several blocks deep, even in periods of relative network stability. The difference is that Bitcoin's transparent ledger means that there are events that can be exploited with precision. In Monero, the lack of transaction visibility makes such attacks far less practical, which is important to keep in mind. And the conclusion is, based on the past 2 weeks of live chain data, Monero's recent reorg pattern is well within historical norms. While the privacy model makes it impossible to know which transactions were orphaned, the depth and frequency observed do not match the scale of an active attack. Rumors thrive in the absence of facts, so let's stick to variable on-chain measurements rather than relying to manipulated dashboards or hearsay, which is very well put. And that, once again, I can reiterate, if you want to be able to see some of this data, you can verify this yourself by looking at this data through your own locally synced node. I don't know the exact commands you have to run to see this data. I'm sure those are available online. But yeah, he brought up some really good points about how on Monero it is much less practical to do a double spend, which that is one of the biggest concerns when you get to the 51% attack range. There's other concerns, but double spending is like one of the biggest concerns, because at that point you start to destroy the basis of being able to use Monero, is that someone can then double spend. They can not create Monero at thin air, but basically cheat and spend it twice. And that is much less practical in Monero because of the privacy of transactions. You have much less ability to peer into that, to manipulate in such a way to allow yourself to double spend. And then also, this one's interesting to me. I don't know exactly at what time he pulled the estimated network hash rate. I don't know if this was during the attack, or if this was an estimate over a specific period of time. Because this could potentially give us a greater insight into the real hash rate and if Cubic is lying or not. Once again, I tend to believe that they're close to telling the truth, even if it's manipulated a little bit because of the amount of blocks they have been able to mine. But getting this directly from the node will be more reliable than relying on a website. And then, of course, through this, he's able to sort of extrapolate this further, the real hash rate further, by comparing the difficulty with existing pools. So really cool. Good post. Just looking at data he got from the node itself. If you have any comments on that, feel free to jump in.
No, man, actually, I don't have any comments there. That's very well covered. In a lot of ways, I'm learning from you guys and guys like Johnny Law when they post these things, because I haven't really dug deep into the into the signatures of their mining and everything. So I'm enjoying it very much.
I guess in order to actually change to, there we go. I'm gonna change back to my other browser. Gotta stop screen sharing. Kind of clunky. Yeah. And oh yeah, already covered that. I talked about that with the website directly. I don't think I had any more information to really add about that. But I did want to bring up one or two of Bawdy's posts, kind of in line what he was talking about earlier, with how it is interesting how a lot of these things are happening around the same time. Looks, we got a super chat come up from Unknown, tipped $5. If Cubic didn't announce their attack, would there be any way to know who was attacking? Perhaps this little stunt is related to proving you could take over the hash rate anonymously. That opens the door for more powerful entities to attack without recourse. Potentially. potentially that is the case, and I mean that's one of the concerns that have been brought up with how low the hash rate relatively is. Actually, before I look at this, let me just pull up another one of my posts here if I can find it. Scrolling. I'm trying to use Knitter on this browser, and it's a lot harder to scroll through the timeline. Yeah, so the main thing that I think this brings to the table, like ignoring the FUD, ignoring like the lies, this does bring concern to the table, like we did discuss earlier in the show, and that is that it is relatively inexpensive to get a large share of hash rate on the network. Now, this number that I have here is extremely rough and probably very much on the low side because it's not taking into account a lot of things. But theoretically, if Cubic really wanted to actually complete the 51%, they could do it for a certain amount of money. This number was kind of pulled out by just averaging the cost of what it would actually cost to get the amount of hash rate they need from mining rigs on MoneroTopia. Now, that website doesn't actually have that much hash rate available. I think they have less than 1 gigahash. And at that point, the cost starts to skyrocket because if you've got to spend money at like AWS or like, Linode or any of these larger server farm companies that provide a lot of server space and CPU cycles, the cost is going to go up significantly. So this is just like a lowest case scenario, is that they could potentially pay approximately 120,000 per day to add 2 more gigahash to their pool. Once again, very harshly approximate and very much on the lower side, but I don't imagine it would be like terribly higher than that, unless I'm like really misrepresenting it. But given that they've already been able to get 3 gigahash a second over a very short period of time, that does raise some flags about the fact that Monero's network hash rate in general is relatively low, especially compared to other chains, which is partially due to the fact that we use RandomX, which then brings in all the arguments about, do we change proof of work or whatever, compared to something like Bitcoin, which is in the Zeta hashes, but that's because of lots of ASIC mining. So, within this, I think there are good things that can come about this, like assuming Cubic doesn't continue to cause more like PR damage and, actually end up 51%ing the network. I think this did kind of get the gang back together, and people are starting to talk about solutions. People have been involved with Monero for years, are like actually having conversations about like what can we do to either short term make this a lot harder, and then long term to really improve the network and its resistance to 51% attacks. But what you can do at home, of course, is you've got gaming PC sitting around, you've got like old computers or something, just spin those up, start mining, assuming your electricity cost isn't absolutely insane. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be profitable for you, but it is a small price to pay for what Monero offers in terms of its freedom of being able to spend your money. So if you have if you've got AMD Ryzen systems sitting around, those are the absolute best systems you could have to mine on RandomX. So I highly recommend, if you have systems sitting around, just boot them up, put them in a room that can get a little bit hotter, and start mining on GooPax. And I recommend you check out Xenu's got a couple really good tutorials if you're like a little bit scared of touching this. He's got a couple good video tutorials that kind of walks you through how to do that, setting up GooPax. And then if you want to throw money at it, there's a lot of people saying that, hey, I've got all this money, I kind of want to throw some at this problem. Then you can very much do so. This isn't a permanent solution, but this is something you can do right now, is miningrigrentals.com. They have a lot of hash rate available at relatively low cost. You can get a lot of hash rate for not too much money. And so for about half a day, I was mining, I think, 2 mega hash a second. But you can do much less. You can do a lot more. You can pay in, unfortunately, ironically, you can't pay in Monero. You can pay in Litecoin though. So I deposited some Litecoin. But in a way, you're turning your Litecoin, like Bawdy was saying earlier, you're turning some of your other altcoins into Monero by doing this. Once again, you're probably going to get like a third, maybe a half back if you're lucky. Monero is not that profitable to mine, which is something that could be improved to incentivize miners. But this is a way that if you have money you want to throw at this to bolster like legitimate hash rate, then you can do that as well. And I think I will leave my long rant spiel there. I think I mentioned about everything I wanted to. And of course, here's Bawdy's tweet, which he talked about during price report of how coordinated this could potentially be.
All right. Good job, Tux. Very well said. So do we want to, what do we want to do? Do we want to move, when do we want to do news? Because obviously, I would like to go over that X post I put up. And we could go through all the issues and have people come and like talk about them.
I can go ahead and I have all the links open, so I can go ahead and go through that right now if you'd like me to.
Do the news?
Yep.
Yeah. Why don't you try to run through the news fast, and then we'll focus back on all the proposed solutions that are being discussed right now. We are almost we're an hour and 43 minutes into the show. 520 live viewers. Guys, like and retweet. Tux is going to run through the news, and then we will get back to the main topic at hand here, the Cubic attack and what Monero should be doing in response. Talk about what some of the short-term solutions that are being proposed, things that could be done ASAP if they do appear to get too much hashing power, if they become too disruptive, things that we could immediately do to thwart them. And then talk about some of the longer-term solutions that are being discussed, given what this attack has exposed, and that we should probably think about just bolstering our proof-of-work consensus mechanism long-term. So